All right, friends. Just wanted to jump on and discuss a few key things that's been happening in the news. Some things that are quite frustrating, some things that are just absurd, and just you can't even believe that it's actually happening. Um, it's an interesting time in politics today where it's not even typical Republican versus Democrat stuff. It's really beyond that. And it's a really troubling time when you see just how far apart Republicans and Democrats are on everything, big and small. Voting rights, for instance, you see the Democrats trying to pass legislation that'll allow for voting rights to be protected in this country as they should be. It should be a top priority to protect voting rights. And Republicans refusing to do anything to protect voting rights, mainly because of the big lie, right? Even Republicans who don't fully believe in the big lie know that if they came out in support of voter right protection, they would be slapped down by other Republicans and the former president of the United States. And so, because of that, they don't speak out. And it's really just cowardice. That's the best way that you could describe it. So just a quick update, the Democrats introduced the For the People Act in both the House and the Senate, and they passed it out of the House pretty easily, obviously. Got to the Senate, major roadblocks, wouldn't even be able to debate it because of the filibuster. So Democrats came together, they took some criticisms, they took some input, some good, some bad. Joe Manchin, Lisa Murkowski, a couple others, tried to get together, figure something out. And Democrats in the Senate introduced a new bill, the Freedom to Vote Act, that is a compromise bill, right? It's not everything that was in the For the People Act. It's got a lot of really good stuff in it. But the goal there was to try to get some Republicans on board. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm not holding my breath because, frankly, as I said before, it doesn't seem like Republicans are interested in protecting voting rights. And all across the country, Republicans at the state level are trying to introduce bills that would suppress the vote in one way or another. So it's a major priority. The Freedom to Vote Act needs to pass. The John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which is a very different bill, also deals with voting rights, but in a different way. The main thing that the Voting Rights Advancement Act, or the VRAA, would do is restore the pre-clearance requirement that was part of the original Voting Rights Act. And this used to have support, across the aisle. And it got gutted. This pre-clearance requirement got gutted in a 2013 Supreme Court decision called Shelby versus Holder. And the pre-clearance requirement, what's really interesting about it is it basically says that if a certain state or, county or, district level has passed a certain number of laws that have been suppressing the vote in some way, shape, or form, there's a whole formula for it, that they would have to submit new laws to the Department of Justice to get pre-cleared. So basically, it's just a little hurdle that they have to jump through, that the Department of Justice would have to review the law, make sure that it's not going to suppress the vote of, minorities of any sort. And if it doesn't, great, then the law could pass. Like, they'll just move on. Like, here you go, here's your law, go do it. But without that pre-clearance requirement, what happened after 2013 is that states just started passing laws left and right that were violating people's rights. And yeah, we have the courts, and you can go to the court system, afterwards, and you can sue the state, because the bill is violating their rights. But oftentimes it takes too long, and an election cycle can happen where these voting rights are already being violated. Oftentimes the courts in these states, where they're largely Republican states, where they're passing these laws, have Republican justices. And so at the state level, when you do sue and it goes to the court system, it doesn't always work. So that's why we need some federal protections of voting rights. So that's one key issue here. The other key issue that I just wanted to talk about briefly is the Protecting Our Democracy Act. Now, this is a bill that's been reintroduced in the House, led by Adam Schiff, but many other Democrats as well. I think it has over 100 and something co-sponsors already. That bill would basically provide oversight, right? We saw with the Trump administration, 4 years, how fragile our democracy was and how weak the guardrails of our democracy was. We thought we had strong enough checks and balances, but the Trump administration showed us that that wasn't the case, and they really pushed the envelope and tried to test the guardrails, and they barely held on. And so what the Protecting Our Democracy Act does is it restores, and strengthens some of those guardrails and makes sure that the president can't pardon himself or, have other self-serving pardons. Make sure that certain pardons have to go through and provide information to Congress so that Congress can have some oversight over the pardons. Make sure that the president, vice president candidates have to release their tax returns so we get to see, what conflicts of interest they may have. Restores the Protecting Our Democracy Act restores some of the oversight that Congress should have, restores some of the power of the purse back to Congress, provides some oversight over presidential emergency declarations, and a number of other things. It's a good bill, and Republicans should support it. I mean, Democrats are introducing this bill again while there's a Democrat in the White House, right? This bill would restrict Democrats and Republicans alike. And while Trump was by far the worst offender of many of these things that they're trying to course correct, Democratic presidents have also pushed the boundaries of the law as well. They've had presidential overreach and exerted their power in ways that they probably shouldn't have. And so having more oversight is a good thing. Protecting whistleblowers is a good thing. Protecting IGs, inspectors general, is a good thing. And so I hope that we can get some bipartisan support on this bill. Honestly, if we can't even get bipartisan support on this bill, I don't know what we're going to get bipartisan support on. It's a challenging time, like I said. And just to illustrate just how challenging it is right now, I want to play a little clip from the Democrats on their Twitter page focusing on the debt ceiling. And if you don't understand, how the debt ceiling works, many people get confused by this. But basically, the U.S. government is in a lot of debt, right? We borrow so that we can pay our bills, which is kind of an absurd thing to think about. And you think, the richest country in the world, but we're borrowing to pay down, our debts, to pay down the bills, to pay down what we're spending year in and year out. And that's part of, the budget and the deficit. And, there's a lot of issues there. But basically, what raising the debt ceiling allows for is to borrow enough money to cover our outstanding debts. It's not to cover new debts. It's not to cover new spending necessarily, but to cover the things we've already promised out. And what would happen if we didn't cover those debts is the economy would crash, right? And it wouldn't just be our economy. It would be the global economy because there's so much money that's being, that's out there. We're not paying back those debts. It would be a serious problem. So just to illustrate, though, how ridiculous Republicans are on this issue and how shameless they are and how easily they can lie and switch positions based on who's in power. I'm going to show you this clip from Mitch McConnell. It shows you what he was asked about the debt ceiling, raising the debt ceiling in 2019 when President Trump was in power. And then it shows you what he's saying today. Here you go.
So you are expecting then to raise the debt ceiling once again?
Of course. We will never have America default. But we raised the debt ceiling because America can't default. I mean, that would be a disaster. Republicans are united in opposition to raising the debt ceiling.
So 2019 Republican president, of course, we have to raise the debt ceiling. There's no way we would ever let America default on its loans. Now, we have a Democrat and President Joe Biden. Oh, we're not gonna do that. No, there's no reason for us to do that. What? He very clearly said how horrible and catastrophic it would be if the debt ceiling wasn't raised. Yet now, it's not something we care about anymore. I'm at a loss for words for stuff like that. And it's frustrating because so often you have Republicans that'll say that they're fiscal conservatives, that they care about the economy, they care about, bringing down the national debt. When in reality, that's just not the case, right? Under Trump, our debt was raised by $8 trillion. And a lot of that money came from the enormous tax breaks that they provided. Republicans are quick to increase spending on defense and other things, regularly wanting to increase spending, but they also want to cut revenue. They want to cut taxes. You can't do those things. It's a basic math, right? And so now that Democrats are in power, Republicans are like washing their hands of this whole situation. And so they're going to force Democrats to take action by themselves. It's just an absurd place to be in. Speaking of absurdity, let's talk about something else. We have this. I can't even express effectively how angry this makes me. Hearing that the Biden administration wants to use Guantanamo Bay to house migrants from Haiti, many of whom are here trying to seek refuge because they can't go back home. To put them in GITMO, which should have been closed years ago. That was a key Obama promise that he was going to close GITMO, and he never did. GITMO's been a horrible human rights stain on this country for far too long. We have people there that we were detaining indefinitely who were innocent. They were flat out innocent. And we're now going to use this place that's chock full of human rights violations with indefinite detention with people who had never gotten a trial to house migrants and asylum seekers and potential refugees. It's really disgusting. There's really no other way to put it. It's disgusting. It's disappointing. It's shocking. It's shameful. The Biden administration just cannot do this. There's no other way to say it. And after seeing some of those horrible videos and images of the Border Patrol, rounding up migrants, whipping them with their reins on their horses, it was just absurd. To go from that and saying that's bad, and to then saying, oh, you know what we're going to do instead of that, because we didn't like that they were whipping them, we're going to send them to GITMO. What? You fucking serious? What? No, that's just not okay. So I really hope that the Biden administration figures their shit out, because this is not it. This is just, it's not. Moving on to other fun topics. We have our good friend Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, who are holding up presidential nominations. Ted Cruz is holding up pretty much every nominee for the State Department. Josh Hawley plans to block almost all national security nominees, if not all, until the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, and the National Security Advisor all resign, which is just utterly absurd. It's ridiculous to say that all three of them should resign because of Afghanistan. But Josh Hawley is not a serious person. He's a senator of the United States, but he's not a serious person. This is all just theater. But the thing that makes absolutely no sense for either of these men is that they supposedly say they care about national security, yet they're blocking national security appointments. And all that does, by not having the right people in the right places in our government, is it risks national security, right? If you don't have the right people in the right jobs at the State Department, at the Department of Defense, how are we supposed to defend ourselves if you have so many vacancies, which we do? We have way too many vacancies. So for the sake of national security, they're going to block national security appointees. It's a backwards logic. It makes absolutely no sense. But as I said, neither of these men are serious individuals. They are senators that are really just political jokesters masquerading as senators, right? They're not there to get anything done. These are the kinds of folks, like Jim Jordan in the House, who are in Congress to break government, right? Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Madison Cawthorn, Andy Biggs, Paul Gosar, all these people, Tom Cotton, these people are not in Congress, not in the Senate, not in the House to get things done and deliver for the American people. They're there to break government and then complain about how broken government is. They're there to line their own pockets. They're there to, get book deals, get other things, leave Congress eventually with, fancy lobbying packages where they'll make millions and millions of dollars. They're not there for the right reasons. And holding up these appointments in an endless fashion does nothing but hurt this country. Does nothing but hurt our national security. Does nothing but put our country at further risk. It's absurd, and it needs to stop. It's an embarrassment that these people have that kind of power. And this is it's how broken the Senate is, that one or two individuals can gum up the entire process. Hawley's not showing up for committee meetings, which forces them to not be able to have a quorum, which forces them to not be able to fully meet on putting forward a candidate, right? It's the Senate's job to confirm presidential nominees, and they're just not doing their job. We saw this with McConnell when Obama appointed Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court. He refused to meet on him. He refused to give him the nomination hearing. This is not how our government is supposed to work. And it's not how a democracy is supposed to work. When you can have just one or two individuals breaking the entire system for their political games. It's bullshit. And we need to reform the Senate. We need to figure out a way to, at the very least, edit the filibuster, if not fully remove it. Because shit has to get done. And these Republicans are really just standing in the way of any kind of progress because they don't care. They don't care if things don't work, because that's not why they're there. They're not there to make government better. They're there in many ways to break it. And somehow their voters continue to vote for them even after they fail to deliver for them year after year after year. So that's it for today's ramble. Be back, do another one of these soon. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week and stay sane out there because shit's pretty wild.